All right, let's bring back Jason Miller, who has been standing by listening to Peter's comments coming out. And just your initial thoughts, Jason, before we get into some of the other stuff. What are your thoughts about what Peter had to say there?
Yeah, the first thing that really struck me was the fact that they went and arrested him, put him in handcuffs. I mean, this is Peter Navarro. He's an economist. Yeah. He's a PhD. You see that he's a very serious, very buttoned-up guy, and you're going to go throw him in handcuffs? Eric, how do you see this and not think this is purely just the witch hunt against anyone who had anything to do with President Trump or anyone who might have something to do with President Trump in the future?
Yeah, and not only that, he pointed out, I believe he was on MSNBC last night, and he said, look, he's taking it very seriously. He said, I'm facing a year in prison for this, which he believes is what he said was a quarter of the time he has left on Earth, for whatever reason, and likely all of his savings as well. So he's taking it seriously, but he chose not to. And of course, as you point out, this kind of crazy way they dragged him in handcuffs, taking him in custody. Wow, would that happen if it were someone on the other side that wasn't a former Trump advisor?
Well, no, not at all. And the other thing, too, is when this is something that a lot of people don't realize, but there are a lot of folks, myself included, in President Trump's orbit who've rung up literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, some people millions. Look at someone like General Flynn, people who, whether it be the Russia hoax or the impeachment witch hunt or what we're seeing with Peter Navarro, but people have spent millions of dollars in legal fees, and every single person who's had to stroke a check has said, you know what, I wish I could stand there, I wish I had the courage to stand there and defend myself so I didn't get wiped out of everything that I own or everything I have here on this earth. And, you know, God bless Peter for being a hard charger. The one thing I would say, as great as Peter is, as feisty as Peter is, he's going to need to get a lawyer at a certain point. There comes a time when, especially when you're talking about criminal action, you're talking about being in federal court, you're going to need someone who really knows their way around a courtroom.
You know what he needs? I love him, and he's on the show almost every single Monday. He really doesn't hold back some of the things, and he probably just needs a lawyer to say, hey, just tap him on the hand when he's about to say something that he may not want to say in court, and that is probably worth its weight in whatever he has to pay.
And I would say, Eric, just real quick,
yeah.
The other thing too, and here's the one piece of advice I'd give Peter, is we've already seen, whether it be the Sussman trial or anything else, don't think that any judge that you're in front of is going to cut you any slack. Don't think that they're going to look for any way to stack this rigged system against someone like Peter Navarro. He needs someone who's a bulldog, who knows the tricks, who knows how to push back on him and make sure that Peter does not get railroaded, because let's make it just very clear, that's what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, and let's take a look into next week. What do you really expect? Again, we chatted about this before the break, but prime time. I mean, prime time. This is just so obvious, such a blatant attempt by the Democrats to make this all about theater and political theater at that.
Yeah, I would say that at the end of next week, or when they get done with the first hearing, that if you didn't like President Trump before the hearing, you're probably still not going to like him. If you did like President Trump going into the hearing, well, you're not going to watch or pay attention to any part of it, so you're still going to like President Trump on the other side. This is basically just an echo chamber, a lefty echo chamber, where they think in their minds, well, people at home will stop what they're doing at 8 p.m. at night. No, you're getting the kids put to bed, or you're getting done with the homework, or you're watching sports. We talk about the finals, Stanley Cup, or NBA. You're going to stop and watch Liz Cheney, Benny Thompson, Adam Kinzinger. No, it's people. Now we're getting into the summer. We're into June. People have better things to do in their lives. But the mainstream media, the Beltway, the swamp, they will try to make it sound like it's this big, full production.
Yeah, and they're promising. It literally is like a tease, a movie tease. Stay tuned next week when we take you live to the courthouse. We've got new video. I mean, this is like TV 101.
Well, it is. Even you saw Jamie Raskin say we're going to have explosive new material. Are we in sweeps? I'm sorry, I didn't know they're doing sweeps in June now, but apparently that's what these members of Congress think they're doing.
So who's going to write the scripts again? Is the script writers doing this? They're going to pay some Hollywood. Is Steven Spielberg going to come out and produce this thing?
Exactly. No, I think this whole thing is going to be a charade, and I think what they're going to find is that there's not much of a reaction from this first initial hearing, especially the first ones with Michael Ledig, the constitutional scholar who's formerly on the bench himself, that he's obviously someone who's advising former Vice President Pence. Is this going to go and move the needle? Or people are like, oh my God, did you see Michael Ledig on TV last night? No, that'll be something that no one on the planet says.
We're going to see we're going to see some of these people testify? We're going to see Peter Navarro, we're going to see Bannon and others on the stand?
I would doubt it. I think especially the people who have not yet cooperated with the committees. I think they'll try to get them. But obviously someone like Navarro or Bannon or Scavino or any of the other folks who've said, very politely go pound sand, although some have said it more politely than others. Yeah, there's no chance they're going to show up. I think you're going to see a lot of people who have an agenda, who definitely want to tell a story to try to make President Trump come out in a more negative light. But that's what this is all about. Again, Jamie Raskin, the Democrats, they're saying we're going to have these explosive new details that'll tell our story. That has nothing to do with oversight, nothing to do with the framers. It's a joke.